of our students, faculty, friends, and friends of our esteemed lecturer. Welcome to NYIT. My name is Judith DeMaio, and I am the Dean of the School of Architecture and Design at NYIT, for those of you who do not know me. Before I introduce our distinguished lecturer, actually, I am going to say the factual matters, and I've asked Professor Brian Brace Taylor to make the introduction because it was at Brian's instigation that we were very fortunate that Architetto Porro is with us tonight. So on to some sort of basic things. Please remember to turn off your cell phones. And as stated on our invitation, we are an AIA CES provider. So please make sure to sign on the forms on your way out. This form for AIA members is the same form as for registered architects, even though they may not be members of the AIA. 2 weeks ago was our first lecture in our public lecture series, and tonight, of course, is our lecture with Architetto Porro. And then I just want to remind you that there is a save the date card in the hall that I have somewhere, and it reminds you of the various lectures, and the next lecture will be on Monday, November 3rd, and it will be Dr. Victor Dupuy, who is actually a distinguished professor in our school in the graduate program this semester, and Professor Dupuy was formerly the director of the School of Classical Studies and has also spent a great deal of time in Rome. The following lecture will be November 17th, and all this is on your card, will be Chuck Hoberman, artist and designer, and we look forward to seeing you here. And the final lecture of our series will be on November 24th, and that will be Caesar Pelli and Bill Pedersen in conversation, and that lecture will take place at Steelcase, and you will be getting an invitation. Otherwise, all of our lectures are here. I would like to thank Jennifer Mitchell, wherever Jen is, for helping us always put together these tremendous events. She's the events coordinator for the School of Architecture and Design. I'd like to thank William Sennett, who here oversees the video and technical, and Dennis McCullen as well, who's our savior, because I can assure you I know nothing about pushing those buttons. Okay, on to tonight's lecture. I would just simply say that it would be entitled Buildings in Cuba and France. And I think what's really important, and I was just talking to Architetto Porro, is that it's not only the importance of his architecture and his contribution as an architect to all of us, but it's also the unique and turbulent history of his life, the life or the country that he came from, and what an incredible role he played in all of that before he left Cuba and moved to Paris. A wonderful city to live in, I might add. So without any more, I would like to introduce Brian Brace Taylor, who will make the final introduction. Is that? But I don't know whose this is. Is that yours?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank Dean DeMaio for seizing the opportunity to invite Ricardo Porro to NYIT, and to Ricardo and Elena for accepting to come this evening. I've known Ricardo for about 25 years now, and although he preceded me as an expatriate in Paris by 4 or 5 years, and at the same School of Architecture there, it was only later that we met through a mutual Cuban-American friend and a former student of his, also from Havana. But apart from his friendship, it is his work that has touched me most deeply over the years, both that in Havana and that in Europe. For it is an architecture very much for other people, and yet it has remained strongly his own. There's no doubt that it is not timid. His buildings, each of them, bear his own remarkable stamp, I think, as you'll see as he presents it tonight. Beyond the forms, beyond the exquisite sense of light and texture, you will understand that he is interested in something that is not very fashionable today, and that is meaning in architecture, content. That there must be substance, an idea that is expressed, or a multitude of ideas that people can and will connect with and make their own. The same goes for his belief in urban spaces, that they are for people. In many of his projects, you will see, he conceives of an art school as a village, a middle school in Paris like a small city, as Aldo van Eyck liked to say. Contrary to many architects who either hide or deny their sources of inspiration from the past, Ricardo never does, although you may not see them easily in the architecture itself. Frank Lloyd Wright, for example, is one such source, where it is not the forms of the building, but a notion that Wright espoused, something called, or he called, organic architecture, that inspires. Michelangelo is another. Late 19th century Art Nouveau is another. And yet, this intrepid reader will willingly point to metaphysical or poetic ideas that fascinate him in the same conversation about architecture. Now, Ricardo has had two difficult careers and has surmounted great personal tragedy, but his resilience and his force of personality, depth of conviction, a real love of life, has continued even at 83 to propel him. He hadn't returned to Cuba for over 30 years when he was invited informally by young Cuban architects at the end of the 1990s, but it was not by the government. And he's revisited the island several times, also to meet with students, but outside of official universities and to see his friends. So I'd like you to welcome him this evening and enjoy his presentation. Merci.
To begin a lecture is not easy for architects because we have always received a formation saying that architecture has to be functional. Of course, architecture has to be functional. This is the first law of every architecture. It has to serve to something. I only know one building, the German pavilion of Mies van der Rohe in Barcelona, that has not a special function and who is not interested at all in function. But anyway, all the other buildings I have seen in my life, there was something which was very important. It was function. So in mine, life inside is important, very important, and I just try to make a relation between what I try to do is to play with contents and to make a kind of aller-retour, I don't know how to say it in English, of going and coming back between the life and the forms I put on it and the content, the poetical contents I try to make in architecture, and everything goes together. There is a book of Pevsner, which I don't like especially, but anyway, he says a place to put bicycles is a construction. The Cathedral of Lincoln is architecture. Of course, it is true. Let's make the difference between what is a construction. There are many buildings that you can see that are constructions, and there are very few that you can see that is architecture. Architecture, first of all, is an art. Where begins architecture is when a building becomes a work of art. How do I define art? there is a definition of Hegel, the philosopher, das sinnliche Scheinen der Idee, the sensible expression of the idea, the sensible expression of the idea. Only that is exactly what a work of art can be. Art, of course, is expression. And Dewey, your philosopher, used to do it very well. He said art is expression. But anyway, I have a definition myself of architecture, and I say that architecture is the creation of a poetical frame to the action of men. Of course, men and women all together. But Hölderlin, the German poet, says something about poetry. And he said, because I think it's poetry, the problem we try to work with, poetry is the transmutation of word into words. And I could, in my definition of architecture, is the transmutation of the world into spaces in which you live. And you have to create this transmutation in playing with the life and creating a kind of dialogue between life and this kind of poetry that you are putting in architecture. These contents are the essence of every work of art. The first thing, art is form and content. Art without content is formalism, and it doesn't interest me. There are many, many works of art who are little things who has no meaning at all, and I find in painting and sculpture and many things, I find it very boring. I think that when you have both things integrated, you have a work of art. Heidegger, more than that, said, after saying that art is form and content, he says that there are two things in a work of art. One, he could say, is word, and the other is earth. What means word? How a work of art is expressing or problems, very important problems of a historical moment, of his moment in which he lives, or eternal problems of man. Which are the eternal problems of man? Eros, Thanatos, death. God exists or God doesn't exist. And there are all these things which we could say that you can find it in any time, in any architecture, in any work of art. I play with both of them. From time to time, I try to play with this kind of thing, which is eternal problem of man, and from time to time to a problem of my moment, of what I am living. And doing this, I could say, as a third thing, that I am a romantic architect. What is the definition of romantic by a poet, a German poet, Novalis? Novalis used to say, I romanticize. The world must be romanticized, giving a high meaning to what is common, a mysterious aspect to what is banal, the dignity of the unknown to what is known, a halo of infinity to what is finite. I romanticize, and I try to romanticize also. When I make a work, and I will explain you something, in my whole career, I only had a private client. And it was a private client just when I came back from Cuba and I arrived to Europe. And I built something for a private person in Liechtenstein. The rest has been work for example, the schools of art in Havana, or I don't know, many buildings in France who are of the state, but are cultural buildings, more or less, or perhaps dwellings for workmen. And that is all my work in Europe. I never had in France a private client. All my work in France was done associated to Renaud Delanoux, who is my partner, actually, but it has been just for the state and social architecture. Well, I begin to talk about my schools of art. My schools of art, I was, I made the revolution when I was young, first of all. And I was living in Venezuela. I had to go out of Cuba because I had the police trying to find me. And me and my wife were in the revolution. And after the revolution, all architects were leaving Cuba, and they asked me to come back. And I came back. And I came back. I began to work in projects of urbanism. But in a given moment, it was very funny, because I had a cocktail in my house. And suddenly, there is a very good friend, a girl, who was married to she was divorced, but anyway, she was married to the Minister of Construction, and a very good friend of mine. And she arrives to my house, and suddenly opens the door and enters, and she says, "Ricardo, I have to speak with you." And she says, "You know, Fidel Castro and Che Guevara were playing golf in the country club, who was the most aristocratic club in Havana and was not yet socialized. They went to play in the horror of all the people who were playing their golf." And Fidel Castro began to say to Che Guevara, "You know, this is a beautiful garden, a very beautiful place." And he said, "Imagine this place full of students studying art. It would be magnificent. Don't you think so?" Che Guevara, who was not very interested in art, made something like this. And he went out. And they went out. But Fidel Castro in his car, suddenly he sees this friend that came to my cocktail walking in the street, and he says to his chauffeur, "Please stop beside this woman there." So the car stops, and she says, "Selma, enter here." Well, she enters the car, and he said, "Look for me for the architect who could do the newest thing and the most beautiful, because I want to socialize tomorrow the country club and to make schools of art." So Selma says to me, "Okay, Ricardo, would you like to make the schools of art?" I say, "Yeah, of course I would like to make the schools of art." And said, "You have 2 months to begin the construction." I said, "But I cannot. I cannot. It's impossible. You take it or you leave it." "No, I take it. I take it." I didn't sleep during 2 months, and I began to build what you are going to see now. This is the plan of the schools of art. Why this plan? Because I studied part of my time in France, and then I went to study in Venice, and nothing influenced to me more than the urbanism of Venice. And almost all my architecture has a urban structure. It has the structure of a city. If you see that, there is a narrow street, there is an entrance, there is a narrow street going there, and there is a huge piazza in the middle. And there is All this part was the sculpture school, that part the painting school, the museum over there. Oh, I think I have something here. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. This one. Okay. This is the museum. This is the place in which they make printings, water closets, restrooms. And all these are the classic, I could say, the classes for theory, and this is the administration. So there were corridors like that going on, and like that going on all around, but more or less cloisters, and a piazza, and a big piazza, and a street, just a street, in order to have the sensation of a town. I don't want them to feel in a building in the middle of a field, but to feel them in a city, and a city in which there is a urbanism of communication, just like Venice. There are cities in which you can communicate and cities which is impossible to communicate. And I think one important thing for you who are young architects is to study how to make cities, in the cities, a urbanism of communication. Okay, now this is the first. Next one. Oh. Okay. Next one. Who influenced me? The painting of Wilfredo Lam. Why the painting of Wilfredo Lam? Because most of the bourgeoisie, the high bourgeoisie of Cuba, left Cuba. Let's say the aristocracy of Cuba went out of Cuba. And what stayed in Cuba? This aristocracy was Catholic, of course. And the people, the black people, had a religion that had a level more, how could I say, a level of before the religion of Egypt. You see, it was a kind of religion in which, for example, this painting of Lam, I will explain the painting. In this painting, for example, is a woman sitting on an armchair, but the breast of a woman becomes a penis, and the penis has wings, is a bird, and then it arrives to the top and is a tree. It's something of leaves, and then the head has horns, and you see, philosophically speaking, is that the being has no limits. Being a man can become a boa, or he can be, I don't know, a tree, or there is no limits in nature. And in this kind of religion, I didn't take that kind of thing, but I take what was a goddess of fertility, Ochun, who was a goddess of fertility. And I took this sense of a goddess of fertility and to try to make a Negro architecture for the first time. They never had an architecture in Cuba. And it was a moment in which I could do something that was trying to do this. Next one. How did I do it? I make a building as breast of women, full of breast of women. A city in which it could be Ligeia, the Greek goddess of fertility, or it could be Oshun, the goddess of fertility. And all with Catalonian vaults, all with bricks, and no with something very iron or anything like that. It was a moment I wanted to go back to this how could I say, to the land, to the deepest part of the country. In this school, and this is not a moment of civilization which I can try to do. This is an eternal problem of man I tried to express there, as I said at the beginning of my lecture. Next one. Yeah, you can see it from another point of view. Next one. And I hate clean architecture. I hate it. I love dirty architecture. Very dirty. When more dirty, the best. And it is dirty architecture. It looks dirty. And more dirt is better. Now it's clean again because they have rebuilt many things that were in bad condition and everything. But anyway, I wanted this kind of feeling. It's just as the color of the skin of a mixture of white and black person, you see? Next one. This is the entrance. The entrance is just like something that pulls you inside, invites you to go inside, aspires you to the interior. Next one. Next one. Next one. And now you go down. I wanted to have the feeling that you have to go deep in the earth. Next one. And there is the narrow strip beginning. All in brick and everything in red. Next one. You have the corridors in every side. Next one. And now we arrive in a place in which the students can place their sculptures in order to see how they could place a sculpture in the middle of a urban space. Next one. And that is the Piazza. And in the Piazza, as it's Gea is a goddess of fertility, I made a fountain. I am a sculptor. I am a painter also. And I made a sculpture for the fountain, it was more or less a papaya. Papaya is a fruit who has an implication of feminine sex. Next one. That is the papaya. And everything is... and there was something very funny. I asked one of the men who were working there, one of the workmen, and I asked him, he was a black man, and I asked him, now this space, what brings you, to what does it resemble? He said, it's just like this part of a crocodile. I was in admiration, in total admiration. Why? Because I think there is something very important in architecture. Is a sentence of one of your poets. He said, the greatest poet is not he who has done the best, but he who suggests the most. He, not all of whose meaning is at first obvious, but he who led you most to think, most to believe, most to complete in your turn. It was Whitman who said that. Next one. And this is the interior of one of these spaces in which they are making sculpture. Next one. The museum, the interior of the museum, 3 vaults that make a whole space. Next one. And now the corridors. Next one. The piazza with all these alligator forms that saw this worm that I never imagined, because I never think of alligators. For me, it was something new. Okay, next one. But it's very important, you know. I make a parenthesis in all this. I made once, they asked me in l'Architecture d'aujourd'hui, the magazine, to make an article about Michelangelo, something very rare, very strange in this magazine, which is of modern architecture. So I went to Rome to make the whole article about the Campidoglio of Michelangelo. And I saw so many different things that I don't know if Michelangelo saw it or not. But I said all I saw. And I said, thank you, Michelangelo, thank you, because you did all this for me. And I made my article. And a good work of architecture and a good work of art is what you can make a projection of yourself in the building or in the work of art. That is important. Next one. Now look the papaya. And there was water falling down, and the ladies that were in the direction of culture, the Minister of Culture was a lady, and she found it very indecent. Next one. The first school of art, I made it in an eternal problem of civilization. The second one, I wanted to express a problem that not even the Russians did in their moment. That was the expression of a revolution, the feeling you have in the beginning of a revolution, in the romantical moment of a revolution, before revolution becomes regulation, and it becomes rather sad, very sad, you see. And so is why I am here now, making this lecture here, and why I went to work in France. Okay, now, this school. I didn't want to express the same thing. I wanted to express the feeling that you can feel at the beginning of a revolution. This is the plan. You have two spaces for dance with the two spaces for excuse me, two spaces for dance with the bathrooms, two spaces with the bathroom. They used to come here to study very young, so there are theoretical classes, a theater, entrance here, and administration. When you are here, you enter, and you have a first piazza here, the library is there, the place for have a lunch or something is there, and then you go back to a narrow street and you have a piazza. Both schools has the structure, a urban structure. Next one. How it was. I tried to produce the sensation that you could feel in that moment, that you could feel in a piazza, that the people gather together, 1 million people. In that moment, I just have made before the revolution, and I felt this sensation of explosion, of emotional explosion. Next one. And you have as if there was an explosion, and all the votes are exploding, coming out. You see? And you have as two arms that are receiving you to enter into a first piazza that is behind this entrance. Next one. You have everything here is more tragical. It's harder. It's not soft. I didn't try to make it as the other one sensual. I tried, on the contrary, to create something more epical. The steps are harder, and everything is harder. Next one. And when you arrive here, there was something I wanted to give, the sensation of the revolution as a glass that you break with your hand, and it smashes, you see? And all the floor of this was like if you push on the glass and you break it. Next one. You see, as the floor is broken in this entrance. Even the steps are broken. Next one. And I am just making you walk around. Next one. And then you have a narrow street. In the contrary of the other, the elements are very angular, very hard. I didn't want it to be soft. I wanted to give a more dramatic sense to this school. Next one. And when I arrived to the interior court, what I wanted to create is the atmosphere of a painting of Greco. in which, if you analyze very well, he has an anguish, but it's created by small angles in all directions, small angles, all around. And the piazza is full of these pillars going in all directions, and it is just like an explosion. Next one. Look at these pillars around the piazza. It's just one in any direction and the other in other direction, and it's just like in Greco. You see, small angles in all directions. Next one. And I tried to create an anguish there. And now I am in the piazza, and I see the entrance at the other side, and I just make this narrow street to arrive to the center of the piazza. Next one. The theater. The theater. I made the theater more or less as a spider. The top of the theater as a spider on the students. Next one. You see it. Next one. And then the interior of a place for dancing. Life, which I told you at the beginning of lecture, is important for me. I wanted that the architecture, with dancers jumping in space, that, for example, you have a wall here, but you have in another, a bit farther, you have these things semi-transparent. And this, after that, you have the glass windows. And you have something that is going up, and at the same time, the roof that is blown up, as if the dancers, when they are moving, everything is in explosion. Next one. There you can see them dancing, and you can have all the transparencies I used to create this sensation. Next one. This is the space for lunch. Next one. And this is from the top. And it gives you the sensation of a glass that breaks when you smash it with your hand. Next one. When I was there with an architect, a Polish architect, we made a competition for Spain, for San Sebastian, a project that never won. But anyway, we were inspired by Guernica painting. And we tried to create this sensation, for example, in the entrance. And we tried to create this sensation in the top of the building. And to create the sensation of an enormous insect, more or less a scorpion, with a higher part here, just like a scorpion. And this is more tragic. In Spain, what you have in its tradition is more thanatos than eros. It's death. You have a tradition of death, very popular tradition. Next one. You have the Guernica, and you have the sensation. We wanted to have this sensation of how could I say, of the construction, of destruction, of the whole thing, as Picasso did in an image of the bombing of Guernica. Next one. This is the back part of it, just like a city, always a city. Next one. Now, I was forbidden in Cuba. My architecture was forbidden. They decided that the best architecture were the prefabricated architecture of the Soviet Union. And so I had to leave Cuba. And I went to France, where I studied, and I have many friends. And they were very kind to me. And I went to France. But my first client was in Liechtenstein. He was a financial banker in Liechtenstein. He wanted a building in which he could show his collection of surrealist and modern painting before entering his office. And he asked me to make a building in the side of a mountain. So there were several things that pushed me to do this building. First of all, I have done a revolution, and I am now in front of financial world and the richness of financial world. So I made the building as three fingers who are touching a golden energy. And all these elements that were here moved with the wind until, you know that in Switzerland it's very democratical, and every neighbor has the right to say that they don't like your project, that you have to change it. And the neighbor, that I hope she's in hell, she decided to fix all these things and no movement at all. So I had to fix it. Okay, now they don't move. I wanted to create something dynamical, and it doesn't move. Next one. Next one. Now, you see the three fingers? And all this as something which is also has a link with Rococo architecture in Austria and in all these countries. And besides, there is Nietzsche, who made this man, Zarathustra, this magnificent thing, Zarathustra, the man who comes out of the mountain. And I made three fingers of a giant coming out as a Superman, coming out of the mountain, and as an homage to Nietzsche. When we did this, it was beside the Rhine River. And what influenced me was an opera of Wagner about the gold of the Rhine River. And of course, this gold of the Rhine River was very important for me. It was not far from the Rhine River. And so it was the beginning of me to think how to make a building that goes with the client, that goes with the atmosphere of the town, and that does everything like that together. Next one. And I change, of course. Absolutely. Now you have the fingers. Next one. The two views of the interior, different views of the interior. Next one. And in that place, it was May 68. And they asked me for a youth club beside the Rhine River. So I tried to make an anthropomorphic architecture. I tried to make what was a young man at that moment. His chest is making explosion, his hands were flying, and his head also was flying. It was May 68, with all this youth movement that you have in San Francisco and you have everywhere in Europe. And it was also in Austria and in Liechtenstein, of course. Liechtenstein was a part of Austria. Next one. This is how you see from the not seen from above, because it was to be seen from the mountain. So it was a facade that was important. Next one. Next one. And a city like a man in Yugoslavia. They decided to make a competition and to make a city for tourists. But I decided it was a bay, you see, and all the traffic was through the bay, and I decided to make it just like a giant, just like Arcimboldo used to do in painting. You see, there was, for example, there was the head, it was the administration. This is the stomach, it was the restaurant. The place for reunion, the two hands, and the arrival here, and then you have all the houses all around. The houses all around. And it was the center of the town. Next one. And this is Arcimboldo. Arcimboldo, when you see it far away, you see a head. And when you go nearer, you see that these are fruits or something like that. You see? And I try to create this kind of ambiguity in architecture. Next one. And I had a client for a house in Iran, which is very much in fashion now. And I wanted to create the atmosphere of a garden of paradise, which is something very deep in that tradition. So I did this house like that, all with prefabricated things. Next one. And my first client in Paris. My first client in Paris was to make a school, not a high school, it's a primary high school, you see? Yes. And it was in Saint-Denis, a place of workmen. And of course, we made something with to give a piazzas, because we have to connect two streets by a street there. We have the dwellings of teachers here, and we have all the school in this place, and an old building there that we made. An old building is there, and we try to integrate it to the old building. Next one. What did I do in sculpture for this building? I decided that which could be a symbol for a school. A symbol, an old symbol of knowledge, is a dove. A dove is ancient. When you see ancient sculptures of Iran, you can see that there is a bull who has wings of a dove and the head of the Shah. The dove is always a symbol of spirituality and, of course, a symbol of knowledge. And I tried to make the building as a dove. So I made myself a sculpture that goes with the architecture, that integrates to architecture, in which the dove comes out of a book. Next one. The sculpture is here, you see. And the whole building is just like a dove with the head here, with the head there, and just like the wings, the feathers of a wing going in that sense. Next one. And the back of it, I made just a mural painting on the roof to give the sensation of wings, that it becomes wings. Next one. And the library is just like a big bird. Next one. The interior, as interior of an organism. And this is the place in which, of course, the first Gothic building was built. It was Saint-Denis. And so it was just a kind of play with Gothic architecture that was very important for me. I wanted to give a little of this feeling and to express it in absolutely modern way. So in the entrance, I made a kind of arena theater. For the students at the entrance, they can sit there, or at the moment they want to have a reunion or something, it is at the entrance of the building, in the entrance hall of the building. Next one. You have the entrance there. Next one. You have the entrance. You have the whole space of the entrance. Next one. And there is it goes down little by little to this place in which there is a place to speak to the students or something like that. Next one. Second of this building I won in Paris, I tried to do another thing. You have two blocks, one here and one there. These two blocks, I tried to make the biggest one as a male beast and the lowest one as a female beast. Next one. So it is the head of one of the beasts, of one of the animals. It is the female head. Next one. And the male head is here, as if the male is going to join the female. And between them, in the floor, I made a yin and a yang in order to create the integration of opposed. Next one. But at the end of it, in the entrance, you have the integration. In the interior, you have a tree of life, and now there, in the back part, scissors, in the sense of life and death. Next one. This is the interior. There is a tree of life and colored glasses, used as a mural painting. And at the same time, I wanted the problem of our time. The problem of our time, Einstein spoke about simultaneity when he made his tried to make a popular explanation for his theory of simultaneity, and he said that you are in a train and the train is going very fast, and you walk into the train and you superpose your movement to the movement of the train, but there is a river that crosses and has a movement, and you superpose different kinds of movement, and you have this sense of seeing all them at the same time. So I did it with the staircases in different points of the entrance hall to give the sensation to have a link with our time. Next one. This is the part of this kind of element of a structure that becomes a kind of a tree in the interior, to give you the sensation of this is a tree of life. Next one. Next one. And who is the worst urbanism on 20th century? I don't doubt to say that it was Le Corbusier, the worst of all. His influence has been awful. He has done the most terrible spaces. Because of him, other people have done the most terrible spaces that has ever been built in humanity. In a place like this, with an urbanism influenced by Le Corbusier, they made this building. They put dynamite because it was full of people selling drugs, and it was terrible. So they wanted something in substitution of this. They asked a Japanese team, and they asked me to make a project. And I won. I won the competition. Well, next one. Of course, I did something which has nothing to do with those high buildings. I made narrow streets and piazzas, which I like very much. Next one. And this is my building. And this is my building, very low cost for workmen. And I made all the mural paintings. All these mural paintings, I did them just to give the sensation of two animals going together, joining together. Next one. And now you can begin to walk around. Next one. Next one. Next one. And you have the interior of the apartments, who are not so bad. Are very agreeable, I think. And this is the entrance hall with color glasses. Next one. And in a university, we won the competition to make dwellings. And I like to play with oppositions. And I made a building. One of the two buildings, because there are three buildings, one here, and one here. The first one, everything falls down, and in the other, and you have the roof, this advance and this advance, and you feel that it is falling down. And the other one is, on the contrary, going up and going up to play with the opposites, with opposite things. Next one, perhaps the influence of the other one you saw. And of course, I had a very little space for the interior. So I played with colored glasses to create just a little atmosphere in a very, very small space of a small cathedral. Next one. This is the top part, the top of the staircase of the interior hall. Next one. And this is the one of the buildings that goes up. Next one. Another college. What college? No, it's not a college. It's I don't know, high school. Another high school, bigger, for 800 students, in the same city of in Cergy-Pontoise, which is a city near from Paris. And of course, there we had some things of some rules of urbanism. We cannot separate from the limit we had. Only here we could do something different. In the other part, we had to follow exactly the limit, exactly highness they told us, and there were rules, very strict rules. Next one. In this one, I wanted to have something in the exterior which goes very much with the French tradition, with this tradition of Château de la Loire. And of course, everything is prefabricated. But anyway, I tried to play with this tradition and to create at the same time a dynamic. Next one. This is the back part of the building. There is an axe who comes until here, in which there is a small pyramid in the garden. Next one. This is the entrance. Next one. With colored glasses, the entrance hall. Next one. With colored glasses, but interior, there is a very old thing that many religious architecture try to do, and I think it's something magnificent. It's an image of nature. And I tried to create an image of a forest, of trees, and that everything become a tree. Next one. These are this is part of the entrance hall with the staircases. Next one. And this was very funny. Because once I was in my office, and there is a lady, I take the telephone at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I take the telephone and he says, Mr. Porro, with a very sweet voice, and she said to me, what have you against the CRS? CRS are these brigades of the army who come with helmets when there is a riot. I said, me? I love them. I love them very much. Why do you ask me this question? Because you didn't present for the competition. Which competition? I said, we have a competition to make a whole city for these people. I said, I present, what can I do? Before 11 o'clock tomorrow, you present me your papers. I said, nobody's leaving the office until the papers come out. Okay, and we won the competition. So, where can I make something for these people? Uccello made this battle in the Louvre. It's in the Louvre, Paolo Uccello, in the Renaissance. I think it's one of the most beautiful paintings, the Battle of San Romano, the most beautiful paintings of Paolo Uccello. And I say, why not to make a Paolo Uccello for these people? A battle? Let's make a battle, a military building. They are going to be very hard there. Next one. So, this was the plan. We have piazzas and a group of buildings around piazzas. Only this part was built, and this part not yet. Okay, next one. So begin to look that everything is aggressive. You have a kind of a, I don't know how to say it in English, what they use this gentleman with long things like this. Puff, no? Everything is like that. You see, you have them here, you have them everywhere. Next one. You can see how I use things of futurism, elements of futurism, making this kind of things coming out of these elements to make this movement stronger. Next one. And this is the school for these people. Next one. And if you see these windows, just the bottom of it is just like a fortress. A fortress. The entrance here to one of the dwellings. Next one. And if you see the windows, they are like guns. Prefabricated also. And next one. And there are narrow streets and a building for a social building in which there is a restaurant and everything for them. Next one. And this is the entrance hall for the dwellings. Next one. The entrance hall for the school. Next one. And now I am building this hospital. This is a hospital for Alzheimer's illness. There is a new philosopher, a new German philosopher, Sloterdijk, who used to make an image for the world, actual world, as a kind of saliva. How could I say saliva? Saliva. Full of small spheres, of thousands of small spheres, and that is our world today. The first sphere that we have in history is a sphere with God in one side and Adam in the other. And now it's millions and millions of small spheres. And I didn't take this sense exactly, but I took the sense of the explosion of the sphere in the entrance hall. And okay, next one. This is the entrance hall. Of course, this is a perspective not yet built, but it's a building that is in construction with a color glassed blue and red. Next one. This is the entrance. Next one. This is the interior piazza of the building. Next one. This is a school for hotels, a tourist school. We had terrible things. We have to respect a building of 1970 awful there, and a building of 1970 awful there. We could change a little only. And we only could do something there and in a place for reunion there. That was all. And behind, a very big thing. Next one. So this is the conference hall, the entrance here, the library is there, but of course we built this part. And this was the old building, we changed a little the windows and small things like that. Next one. I go directly to the entrance. Next one. This is the part in which there are the restaurants of this place, because they teach how to cook and how to serve a restaurant. It was just like a kind of return to the schools of art in Havana for me. Next one. This is the entrance hall. The entrance hall with color glasses. Next one. Next one. Next one. This is another thing. A police station. The same people for whom I built the other buildings decided that I could build a police station. So what to make in a police station? We have terrible thing because there was a prison inside for people who just committed a crime, and before they judge him and they put him in another prison. So it was very difficult as a program. Next one. What did I try to do? First of all, the police had to be very narrow, from very near from land, very solid. So I made this kind of fortress I did before. In the entrance, I made a kind of a balance for weight, you know, a balance in which you have to know the weight of something, you put it there and you see the balance, which is the weight it has. And I made a kind of a balance in the sense that there is justice in it. And on the other side, all this very dynamic in the sense that the police must be very dynamic. Next one. This is the entrance, the balance here. Next one, the balance. Next one, you have it here. Next one, next one. This is the interior. No, this is in the night, excuse me. This is in the night. Next one, and this is interior. What you see there. Next one. And a psychiatric hospital, which has been one of the last I finished. When I made this project, when I tried to make the project, I wanted to make something very onirical. And I spoke with the psychiatrists, and they said, onirical? Not at all. We want a small flower. I said, a small flower, and I made a small flower out of it. So it has to give all the sensation of small flowers. I don't think I have the plan of it, but when you see it from the top, it's just like a flower. Next one. The entrance with color glasses there. Next one. With interior courts in which 2 or 3 rooms has a parlor in order that they don't feel in a closed space. They have the view of the exterior, and at the same time, they have, when they take the corridors, instead of a corridor of a hospital, they have spaces like this. So we had to humanize, to make it very soft, very sweet, the contrary of the police station. Next one. And with color glasses to create an atmosphere with all the glasses for the these poor people, they don't commit suicide. We have to put glasses around the staircases. And this is the living room there are 2 views. This is the entrance hall. And this is several rooms with a kind of living room here. And I am taking this photo from the interior court. So they have small spaces for them in front of an interior court. Next one. But the last project is the schools of art again. Nietzsche used to speak about the eternal return. And at the end of my life, I have built schools of art in France. And the schools of art are built in a magnificent Romanesque town, Le Puy-en-Velay, which is in the mountain. It was built, this town, in the crater of a volcano. And all the town is more or less in the atmosphere of this cathedral, which is very Romanesque. Next one. Look at the cathedral. We had to play with the sense of the town. Even we have to use tiles, ceramic tiles on the roof. When you see this Romantic architecture, the sense of the number 3 in every part of the building. Arches, in number 3. 3 is the symbol of God. And arches, which are very static, is a part of Romanesque architecture. On 3 here, and 5, which is a symbol of man, and 3 here as a symbol of Christ, man and God at the same time. I wanted just to make a reference to this architecture in something new who has nothing to do with it, but something which is very important is that you have to mix your architecture. Ernesto Rogers, a very good architect of the 50s, used to say, la persistenza ambientale. What exists in the town, you have to continue it and not to break it. And I wanted to do it. So, first of all, we have to keep an old building here from 19th century. All this. So I could do my entrance here and make a piazza there with a school of modern dance, because the school in the old building, I could place a plastic art school and a new school of music and a theater. It was the theme to do. Next one. What did I do? 3 arches. On the contrary of the static building, I made it with a certain dynamism, just in this sense, to create a dynamism of our time, as you can see it. Now, you have these 3 elements who creates a movement. You enter there. Next one. You have a real photo, because the other one was not a real photo. Next one. A sculpture I did of 3 birds in flight. Next one. The 3 birds who are placed here at the entrance. Next one. And this is the central piazza, in which you have the entrance to the theater, and just as if a group of birds begin to fly. Next one. This is the interior of a dance space. Next one. The theater. Next one. The theater. Next one. The theater. And next one. Just a girl there in this space. Next one. It's the end. Okay. So I have made my striptease. It's finished. Thank you. Thank you very much. Of course.
We have some time for some questions, and I have to thank you before I thank you finally.
Thank you.
So can we have some questions, please? We always go through this anxiety. No one raises their hand.
Yes.
Yes. Did you, at the beginning? Yeah, at the beginning you had a school that had, you spoke about revolution and explosion and shattered glass.
Yes.
And when you made this school, did you explain your terms to them and showed all this feeling and emotion
Never
of
explain your
revolution?
terms to your client. Never do it.
Okay.
You just do it very silently. And you say it's very pretty and it's very soft.
Yeah. I had a sense.
And then you build it.
Yeah, I had a sense of like when the artists under the regimen of Hitler and all of this, that their artwork was suppressed, they tried to put in these kind of expressions in there, hiding their feelings about the politics going in at that time.
Well, you know, I have nothing to do with Hitler. I never
no,
met
but,
him.
but you
I
were
never met
under
him.
Castro.
He never invited me for his cocktails, and I never went to one of his cocktails. So I cannot tell you. I don't think he did it. I don't think he did it. I think Hitler, as Stalin, tried to make a classical architecture who has nothing to do, of a very bad taste, beside that, who had nothing to do with their moment. If he would have an architect to do something with their moment, the architect has to do something very tragical if he used my method, and not making the government know that it is very tragical, because if he make them know in a dictatorship, if you say that you are doing something very tragical, you can spend a certain time in prison or die.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Thank you for a very beautiful lecture. I was just curious if you could tell us a little bit about your process. How do you come up with these images? How do you start and then develop your ideas and then and get these buildings built? Can you tell us a little bit about your process?
Well, very simple. I began to work with it. I knew I had an European formation, first of all. And my European formation, I know very well that all good architecture in the world has been done like that. I can, for example, I can speak to you about what is in the School of Architecture of IIT in Chicago of Mies van der Rohe and make an explanation like I did about my building, because they always do it, but they never say it. And I told you I made my striptease.
I'm sorry,
And
this is not what I meant.
did.
This is not what I meant about
No.
your process. Do you work with models? Do you
Oh,
work
yes.
with drawings? That's
Yes.
what I'm trying to.
The only thing I do is I make first how I work. I take function, and I begin to make all possible arrangements of function in a plan. And then I pass to clay, and I begin to make small models of the functions. And then I begin the creative process. What can I do with this function? What is the image I can put on it who has something to do with life, with the life inside, and who is an image that goes very well with the functions that you receive. And then with these small models, I arrive to a certain idea, I make a choice, and I pass to a bigger model in which I make all details, and I begin to destroy myself saying it's very bad, I have to change this, and I have to change that, and I have to change that, and I change the model, and I change the model again, until I arrive to something I think is good. But you have to do it very fast, because clients don't give you too much time to do something. So it has to be done very fast, all that. But I do like that. And after that, I begin to make the plans as everyone and to make the building. And this is what I did in Havana. Now, in Havana, I make a lecture and I said what I try to express in this architecture. At the moment, I was very forbidden. I was very forbidden. But now I am no more forbidden. I come from time to time to Cuba to teach young people. Recently, I came to teach how to make a town. And that's all.
Another question?
Yes?
There's one.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'll sit down. It's more comfortable. Just recently, I saw a video documentary on Havana architecture from around the time when you were doing the schools of arts. And they mentioned, I don't know if it was a rumor or not, but Fidel would like to have the architects from that era come back and build again. It might be a rumor, I'm not sure.
No, it is a rumor. I never built again.
No. But no, but if it would be a possibility, would you like to, build in Cuba again? What would it take? What kind of
Like to
feelings?
build everywhere.
Yeah.
In New York, for example, I would love to build, but I don't have clients.
Yeah. But what kind of feelings would it bring back building in Cuba again? Bad or good or?
No, I will tell you. Recently, they came to see me. And they asked me, with a commission, to show them my buildings in France, some of my buildings, which I did. And after that, they invited me to a dinner at the embassy. And it was to ask me that they didn't have money for paying me if I would accept to make 2 buildings without being paid. And of course, I couldn't do it in my office because my partner would kill me. But during my vacations in my house, I did it, the projects. Unhappily, after I made the projects, they decided that they were not going to build it. And so they never answered. And I am still waiting for the answer of this project I sent in my, well, I built everywhere they asked me, and to build something for Cuba, in which there was no money to pay me, I would do it. Why not? If you are rich, of course, I want my money. If you are poor, no.
We'll take a few more, and then we should go to the reception.
Yes, I have a question. It's from your lecture. I can see that you're influenced by many things like art, philosophy, and poetry.
Yes.
What is the greatest inspiration that you get from when you build?
The greatest influence I had when I read a book of Paul Valéry, a poet, a French poet, was Eupalinus, or the architect. Eupalinus, of the architect, there is a person he made a kind of dialogue, a Platonic dialogue. And there is a man who says, in that moment, Eupalinus told me that he made this temple as the image of a girl he met in Corinth. And he made a transmutation of the girl in mathematical proportions to make the building. And this illuminated me, and I said, well, a building can be a woman. Why not? And I forgot it. It was in my unconscious. When they gave me to build the schools of art, the first thing I did is to build a building as a woman. And of course, when I came back to Paris, where I studied before, when I came back to Paris, I was in the people who sells used books beside the river, beside the La Seine, and I found again Eupalinus, or the architect, by Paul Valéry, and I bought it, and I read it, and suddenly I discovered that I was afraid to put it in my consciousness, but it was inside me, and it came down when I did my first big building in Havana. That is an influence. Another influence for me, Gaudí. Gaudí is splendid. Who are the 2 best architects of 20th century? Gaudí and Frank Lloyd Wright. without any doubt. Gaudí and Frank Lloyd Wright. And the others, well, they are good architects. Le Corbusier, from time to time, he makes something. Ronchamp is splendid. Ronchamp is very, very beautiful. It's a masterpiece. Beside that, I have seen, for example, the Brazilian pavilion made by him and Lucio Costa at the University City in Paris, and it's the ugliest building in Paris. You know? But anyway, Ronchamp is a masterpiece. You know, there are many architects, but anyway, for me, the best are these two, and they have a very strong influence. I learned how to make spaces by Frank Lloyd Wright, and how to make death, if I wanted to do it, with Gaudí.
I have a question. Simple. On this commentary, what is your opinion? You started your lecture with talking about the Barcelona pavilion, I believe.
Yes.
And I'm very curious, what is your opinion about Mies? Because he didn't appear at all in this little list of names.
Mies is a very Platonic architect. For him, for example, I take the example of the School of Architecture of IIT in Chicago. IIT, yes, it's the name. I think so. Well, the School of Architecture, you have 4 beams. 4 is the number of the earth. Between every beam, there are 6 windows, perfectly proportioned. Beautiful windows. In number 6, you have the Sceau de Salomon, how could I say, the star of, the seal of Solomon, you see, which is a triangle like this and a triangle like this. You have the opposed, and they are 6. Number 6 is the number of opposed. So, but it's the number of the perfection achieved by the opposition. The number of equilibrium. Well, you have this, and when you enter, he doesn't like function at all. So you have a huge space empty, in which you have a part is the library, part is the administration, and when you begin to see the students there, you say, but they don't go very well there inside. They should have a smoking, black smoking, or perhaps a frack, and the girls in a long white dress with pearls only, and they should with a cup with a glass of champagne, talking very quietly, and that goes very well with this space. Of course, Mies van der Rohe is not interested in life. He wanted to say, speak of in a very Platonic sense, what is the perfection of the world of technology. 4 as the symbol of the world by technology, and 6 by this equilibrium, this perfect equilibrium, and this empty space in which there is nothing as the perfection, as an absolute. Where is the part of the building in which there is no aesthetic intention at all? In the basement, he put all the rest of the functions of the building, and they are very ugly. It has no intention. It has no aesthetic intention at all. But in the upper part, it's perfect.
In the Barcelona pavilion, I know we have to.
In the Barcelona pavilion, for me, is a sense of playing from the heart